Welcome to the second part of an extensive look at what makes the RWBY villains so flawed. Last time I went into detail about Adam and the White Fang, so if you're done with this video and you want some more, go ahead and check that one out. Anyway, here we go. Let's figure out what makes RWBY's villains so bad. Cinder's faction has been the longest running antagonist seen in the show. True, Adam was introduced to us first, but Cinder's team have played a much more dominant role in the series throughout, even to this day. They were our villains long before the White Fang or Salem, however it's almost hard to tell. Despite being in the forefront of the show, none of these characters have gotten any sort of development. Let's take a closer look at each member to really go into this. Torchwick. He was the first character animated on screen for the show proper. RWBY fought him and his goons, and throughout the first 2 volumes, he was considered her biggest adversary. We didn't know about Cinder's plans, and the White Fang were just a bunch of lackeys that worked for Torchwick. And honestly, Torchwick probably has the best character development out of their crew. We see different sides of him. Angry, excited, afraid. We get to see some depth of his character, and it makes it easy to fill in the holes of the things the writers haven't told us. Torchwick is animated and fun. Honestly, his biggest detriment is that we don't really know his motivations as to why he's following Cinder, but we kinda don't have to. Even from his earliest appearances, we can tell he's lived a long while as a crime lord. He barely fights for himself, usually opting to send swarms of peons at the heroes. He revels in his crimes, whether it's robbing a store or attacking RWBY. He's a bad dude, and following Cinder's orders was probably just a good business opportunity for him. Even though we never got to see his semblance, he's still a threat during combat. We can see he's a really good pilot. He effortlessly takes control of any vehicle he's behind the helm of. Also, he's dexterous enough to block or misdirect all of Sun's bullets here. That's crazy! All of that, mixed with his clearly ruthless nature and RWBY's personal vendetta against him, and Torchwick has the makings to be a really amazing villain. Too bad they just kill him then. It's not even like with Adam where he died because of the girls' actions. Torchwick's death was incidental to what RWBY was doing there. She spent the whole fight asking him dumb questions like, "But why are you doing crimes?" And then he unceremoniously gets eaten. Why the hell did the writers take our best developed villain, who RWBY herself was personally always going after, to the point that she and Torchwick knew each other by name, and then just kill him off with no fanfare? If RWBY had made actions that led to him being eaten, that would have been one thing, but nope, she's just as surprised as the audience. The worst thing is, it feels like it was supposed to be a joke. Why would you kill off the first villain our girls fought, and then use his death for a stupid joke? Tee-her-hee-hee, get it? He said he would survive, and then he didn't. Okay, so, fine. Torchwick died along with the school. Maybe they didn't know how he would fit into the whole Salem plot. Hell, I don't even know if he knew about Salem or relics or whatever. It's a bummer, because his more lighthearted yet sassy personality would have been a nice change of pace from everyone else's doom and gloom and overly confident demeanor. But whatever. However, you all know we can't talk about Torchwick without also bringing up his second hand, Neo. Neo's a weird one. She wasn't introduced to us until the 2nd volume, and Monty admitted that she was inspired by a gender-bent Torchwick cosplay. Her absence from the first volume is confusing, as we see her with Torchwick right away from volume 2 onward. And I feel like she would have been a fun addition to the first volume of the series, but that's all in hindsight. Neo is fucking awesome. Right away, her power and combat prowess is a spectacle to see. Watching this tiny little girl flip Yang around, never getting a scratch on her, was amazing. This is the first time we've ever seen Yang lose a fight, and it started what seemed to be a rivalry of sorts between the two. RWBY has a vendetta against Torchwick, and her sister seems to have a similar situation with his right hand. It was cool. However, after Volume 2, things start to go downhill for Neo. She went from being at the forefront of fights, cruel and deadly, to only making minor appearances. We see her disguised as a schoolgirl, and then disguised as a medic. Like, what? Why isn't she playing a bigger role in this plan? Ultimately, she helped Torchwick escape, but what was she doing up until then? Her semblance of materializing new clothes and altering her appearance entirely is crazy overpowered. Combined with her fantastic acrobatic combat skills, and Neo is an irreplaceable asset to the villains. Why don't you fucking use her? On top of that, Neo vanished along with Torchwick. She didn't die, she was just whisked away for the 2 whole fucking volumes. And ever since then, every single person was speculating on her return, but I found it hard to care about that. Without Torchwick, Neo feels incomplete. They were a perfect duo. Watching their fight with RWBY on the airship was mind-blowing. This is hands down the best coordinated team attacks ever displayed in the show. Their weapons and fighting styles complement each other so well. He's relatively stationary with a long-range weapon, she's all over the place and up close and personal. With Torchwick's death, Neo has lost something to her character. Well, what little character she has. She made a remarkable return in Volume 6, so everyone at panels will finally stop asking them when will she be back, and she's teamed up with Cinder. And I realize that I hate this partnership. Cinder is always monologuing and snarking condescending crap to others, and now that Neo is the only one traveling with her, there's no one to interrupt Cinder or be a point of conversation with her. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, Neo is mute. When she was teamed up with Torchwick, this worked. Torchwick would talk to her as if she could actually respond. When Cinder talks to her, it sounds like she's more just thinking out loud to herself. Watching Volume 6, I realized that the writers have used Neo's disability as an excuse to not give her any character development. She's been gone for years. Years! In-universe, she's been gone for at least 3 or 4 months, and we never get any kind of explanation as to where she's been, because she can't tell us. All exposition and backstory needs to be told by word of mouth in the show for some reason, but since Neo can't talk, she can't give us any kind of insight into her character. The best we can hope for is Cinder knows enough about her to tell us for her, but that seems unlikely. Seriously, think about it. How much do we actually know about Neo? Not much. Why is she with Cinder and Torchwick? What is her relationship with Torchwick? Cinder called him her boss, but she seems real upset over his passing for just being a henchman. How old is she? How did she learn to fight like that? Why is she okay with killing people and committing crimes? Where does she cross the line? People have speculated a ton of stuff over the years, but since she can't tell us, we can't find out. People like Neo not for her character, but because she's a cute girl. Honestly, having untold backgrounds and motivations is a common theme with all the villains. Rooster Teeth seems to think just having someone wear a sign that says bad guy is all you need. No motivations as to why they're doing bad things, or if they think what they're doing is right, or if they just don't care. Nope, nothing like that. Moving on, we get to Cinder's personal lackeys, Mercury and Emerald. Making really minor appearances in Volume 1's opening and end credit scene, competent thieves and killers, Emerald and Mercury hide in plain sight during the Vital Festival to help the collapse of Beacon. And then, after that, they spend all of their time sitting around doing nothing. Honestly, Emerald and Mercury are fascinating yet completely underutilized. Despite being Cinder's direct subordinates, they have become completely shafted after the fall of Beacon. And it feels like they're trying to set things up for a bigger plot for the two teens, but since we're so busy with all of the other villains and maidens and relics and all that crap, Emerald and Mercury just feel like footnotes. They started out being surprisingly brutal, as we can tell a bit about their characters right from their first interaction. Emerald is cool and confident, she's an excellent conman and finds Mercury endearing yet also slightly annoying. Mercury, on the other hand, is very go-with-the-flow, a bit of a goofball and not much of a people person. Continuing on with their interaction with Tuscan, and they seem like as good a pair as Neo and Torchwick. Emerald is the face of their operation. She's good at talking to people and convincing them to do what she wants. And if things turn ugly for her, Mercury is the muscle of the duo. He never looks more confident and in control than when he's fighting. Even watching their fight with Coco and Yatsuhashi demonstrates this. Emerald can't talk her way out of this one, so she hides and waits, while Mercury fights them head-on. Emerald only joins the fray once she's using her semblance to disorient and take down her opponents. Remember that I said that Torchwick is probably the best developed villain in their crew? Well, Emerald might be a contender for that title too. Her little character moments and interactions continue to develop her character. We can see she's clearly adores Cinder, maybe even loves her. We can see she regrets some of the actions they've caused with the fall of Beacon. We've seen her question everything they've done. Emerald is emotional, and is probably the only one where we can tell her motivations for sticking with the bad guys. Her infatuation with Cinder. Thanks to the Cinder backstory episode, we see how they met, and we can see why they stick together. True, we don't know how Emerald got into that position as a thief, but at least it's something. Emerald has continued to grow as a character, and even though she's mostly stuck inside of Salem's mansion now, she continues to develop. However, just like Neo, she is woefully underutilized. Emerald might have the strongest semblance in the show, the ability to make her opponent, or multiple opponents at the cost of extra energy, see anything in the world. Her visions seem limitless. She was the main cause of the fall of Beacon, and of Penny's death. She's a powerful opponent once you mix her extraordinary semblance with her quick combat skills, but they don't let her do anything. Volume 4, the most they had to do was make a stupid vision of RWBY for Cinder to threateningly fire blasted? Seriously? That's what you're using your amazing powers for? Playing pretend? Even when Emerald shows up for the fight at Haven, that whole battle is such a joke, she doesn't do anything. For the entirety of the fight, she just makes images of other people, standing around doing nothing. What for? Why not make RWBY see Pyrrha and Penny's death? Why not show Yang losing her arm or breaking Mercury's leg? The sky's the limit with her semblance, but she's being crippled with the writer's own lack of imagination. Now, I realize I've been talking about Emerald a lot, not Mercury. Remember that little description of him I had from his first appearance? Yeah, that's all the character Mercury has. Despite sharing all his screen time with Emerald and her getting little moments of character depth, Mercury is a nothing character. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't show any emotion other than pissed or smirk. He has robot legs, and they pretend that that's contributed to his character, but it doesn't. It doesn't help that by the time we see how Emerald and Cinder met Mercury, he had already become a killer, killing his abusive father and escaping with a great new opportunity for him and his assassin skill set. It's an interesting concept, but unfortunately it sort of rips away any kind of growth for Mercury. By the time we meet him, he has already come to terms with killing people, and is okay with it. He mentions his abusive dad, but we know he's already beaten him. When Cinder met Mercury, it was at the end of a big character arc for him, and they haven't bothered giving him anything new to strive for. We don't even know what his semblance is. Finally, in Volume 6, he mentions to Emerald that his dad stole it away. Okay, cool. Why didn't Emerald already know this? They've known each other for a long time. Before the start of Volume 1, yet every time Emerald and Mercury talk to each other, it's like they're fucking strangers. This is especially clear in Volume 6, where Emerald decides to only now ask Mercury why he joined her and Cinder. Really? You've been traveling with the dude for at least a year, and your first question after he tagged along wasn't, "But why do you want to?" Honestly, if you think about it, Emerald and Mercury barely talk to each other. They're usually just talking to Cinder rather than addressing each other personally. Now that Cinder's gone, their interactions feel empty. Hell, just being in Salem's mansion seems to suck the life out of them. Just like Neo and Torchwick, they've been shoved aside and has contributed nothing to the plot in too long of a time, and I just don't care about them anymore. Even if Emerald and Mercury left Salem and they did their own thing, I wouldn't care. Without Cinder around, Emerald loses a major asset about her character, and Mercury never had one to begin with. Their conversations are dull, and I doubt they could carry a scene together due to their absent compatibility. The last thing I would want them to do is join the good guy side, which a lot of people seem to think will happen. Remember last time, I mentioned how Ilya only got character development because she was destined to team up with the heroes? Well, a lot of people seem to think Emerald could also get that redemption. She's gotten more on-screen development than most of the other villains, and a lot of people find her endearing. However, I have two major problems with this. 1. Emerald is unredeemable. Ilya was able to join the good guys because she never actually succeeded in doing anything criminal. Yeah, she was planning on killing the Belladonnas, but she never did. She was second-guessing herself long before she completely turned to the good guy side. Emerald killed Penny. Emerald was the major factor in Penny's death, and then led to Pyrrha's death. Emerald is to blame for the death of two of RWBY's closest friends, and I would be furious if RWBY just forgave Emerald for that. I understand it's in RWBY's character to try to see the best in people and try to convince them to do the right thing, but Emerald is beyond that. If RWBY forgave Emerald and let her join the good guys because she was bored sitting around Salem's mansion, I would lose faith in the whole series. 2. It goes completely against Emerald's entire character. Emerald is completely infatuated with Cinder. I couldn't believe she would turn to the good guys to fight her. In Volume 6, Mercury finally spells it out for her that Cinder doesn't really care about them, but I don't believe Emerald would just abandon her feelings for Cinder entirely. She might resent Cinder, or feel betrayed, but I doubt she would team up with RWBY and Juniper just over unrequited love. If anything, Emerald and Mercury might become anti-heroes, but true redemption should be out of the picture. Which ultimately brings me to the big bad bitch herself, Cinderfall. Ugh. Cinder, despite being the girls' biggest adversary for such a long time, is one of the worst written characters in the whole show. It doesn't help that the heroes didn't even know she was a villain until the end of Volume 3. We had to just sit there and wait for our heroes to finally catch up that the slimy and obviously evil people RWBY met in that hallway were bad guys. And once they finally do realize that Cinder, Emerald, and Mercury are villains, they've won. Beacon's destroyed, Pyrrha's dead, and Cinder is a maiden. The only time we had with our heroes in an environment where they could get to know our villains was wasted on having them oblivious to the plot until the end of it. On top of that, Cinder just lacks character in general. Everyone else I've talked about has at least some interesting attributes, but Cinder's entire character centers around her being cool and condescending. She's always one step ahead, everything's always going according to plan. She doesn't worry, she doesn't have to make snap judgments or show emotions. She's been a major player in the main plot since her introduction, yet she hasn't changed or developed at all. And the absolute worst thing about it is, she should have! Cinder keeps repeating the same story, losing right at the end. She beats Ozpin, kills Pyrrha, everything is going exactly how she wanted, and then suddenly, RWBY swoops in and all but cripples her. She lost tremendously, right as she thought she had won it all. The next time we see her, she's missing an arm, an eye, and can't even gasp out a couple of words. She went from the top of the tower to nothing in seconds, and it seems like this was going to be an interesting character moment for her, but then they just hit the reset button. Rather than explore Cinder struggling to regain power, clearly considered a joke to most of Salem's subordinates, and her growing resentment towards RWBY, they just made her get better. Cinder waltzes on screen in Volume 5, exactly like how she used to be before RWBY blasted her. She's still condescending, and she's still acting like everything's going according to plan. Her failures at Beacon has resulted in no change or growth to Cinder's character. Cinder is still the same. Cinder always talks down to people. It's not just Emerald and Mercury who she doesn't care about, it's everyone. She clearly views everyone she meets as a tool to achieve her goals, and it makes for a really, really boring conversation. Every time Cinder talks, it sounds the same. It doesn't matter if it's Torchwick, or Salem, or Raven, it's always the same sultry yet belittling tone. Cinder not only lacks character depth, she lacks a real personality. This sort of demeanor worked well when she was the big boss of the villains, but with her fall against RWBY and seeing how the others looked down on her, and things should have changed. But nope. She just acts like she's still hot shit, even though she's missing half her face and her arm. And unbelievably, this whole mess of Cinder being in power, getting right to the end just to fail, happens to her twice! At the end of Volume 5, Cinder infiltrates Haven Academy in an attempt to kill the Spring Maiden and get her powers and steal the relic. However, Raven and Vernal trick Cinder, manages to land a finishing blow on her, and she plummets into the darkness. The Maiden is still alive, the relic is out of her grasp, and once again, Cinder has failed at her mission. Now at the start of Volume 6, I was foolishly hopeful enough to think that maybe, this would mean a change for Cinder. She's completely failed at her mission. She has none of her lackeys and has no more power over people. She goes to Little Miss for help, and for once, someone is talking down to her. Cinder tries to continue her condescending attitude, but Little Miss makes it clear she's not going to stand for that. True, Cinder could just kill Little Miss, but that wouldn't get her what she wants. She's powerless and alone for the first time she's been on screen. What would possibly happen to Cinder now? How will this experience change her? Will she become crazy and sociopathic? Will she become stony and cold? Well, the answer is nothing. Despite setting up Cinder to be in this lowly position, the very next scene she's in, fucking Neo comes back, and all that interesting opportunity for Cinder to change is gone. Cinder and Neo team up, and it's back to the usual. Cinder has an underling again, and together they put themselves in a position of power. Cinder immediately goes back to menacing and acting as if this was all a part of her grand plan. And in the last episode of the volume, she's adopted her bratty, condescending tone again. Once again, Cinder hasn't changed. Let me play you a clip of Cinder from every volume she's been in where she could talk, and let me ask you, does she sound any different?
All we ask is a little cooperation. All in all, I'd call today a success. Oh, come now. Even if you know how a story ends, that doesn't make it any less fun to watch. Aw, don't take it personally, little bird. Your sister was a recent addition. Someone once asked me if I believed in destiny, and I'm happy to say, I still do.
Cinder isn't a character, she's just the concept of a villain. Someone to look menacing on posters and in the theme song. And out of everyone in the whole show, we know the least about her. I've mentioned her flashback episode a couple of times, but honestly it tells us nothing about Cinder's origins or motivations. We know she wants power, but nothing else. Miles and Carrie seem to think rather than give her a reason for her actions, just give her more shitty abilities. Look, she does fire things, and she has a bow and daggers. And she can transform her clothes, and she's stealthy, kinda. Usually spies don't walk in the front door, but And look, she does glass things, and she has these screaming blast dews, and now she's a maiden, and now she can create weapons, and she has a grim arm. All these dumb power-ups don't equal character growth, and in all honesty just muddy her character in the long run. How much of those abilities are due to her maiden powers? Which one is her semblance? I know so little about her, I don't know what counts as maiden crap, dust crap, or semblance crap. Who is this person? Is Cinder her real name? Raven suggests her last name is fake at least. How old is she? She seems young enough to infiltrate a high school. Does she have any family? Where are they? She's based off of Cinderella. Is there no wicked stepmother and stepsisters that influenced Cinder to be so villainous? How did she meet Salem? Why does she want power or to be a maiden? Why is she so comfortable being in charge if she's seemingly so young? We have spent 6 years with this woman, yet we know absolutely nothing about her. She's been in the show for 6 years and her character hasn't developed or changed at all. It's been 6 years and she has just become laughable at best or downright boring at worst. I've never seen a show that had their main antagonist stagnate as a character more than Cinder has been written. Her faction, Adam, and the White Fang, hell, every other antagonist in the show has gotten better depth and development. Fucking Cardin Winchester got more character growth than Cinder has. Motherfucking Cardin! I mentioned how Torchwick and Emerald have arguably the best character development of the villains. Without a doubt, Cinder has the worst. But not just villains. Every single reoccurring character in the entire show is better written than Cinder. It's an embarrassment how they've written our core villainous team. They're all underdeveloped, or boring, or annoying. It's a really big shame that the only one they've ever written to have a little bit of charm, a little bit of entertainment, someone that I actually cared about was on screen, died before the plot ever got started. Alright, I hope you liked that video. It got a little heated, but you know what? Cinder's a pretty terrible villain, is she not? Let me know in the comments. Do you agree with anything I just said? Do you think Cinder's written well? I doubt it, because she's that awful, but let me know if you do think that. Let me know why, also. Yeah, any and all comments, I would love to hear them. I have a Patreon. There's a link in the description. It's Judgmental Critter, so it's pretty easy to remember. Go ahead and check that out. Any and all support helps. I would really appreciate it. And, you know, if you want, do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.